Xylos, a world submerged in perpetual twilight, illuminated by the twin moons that perpetually graced its turbulent skies. This wasn't a realm of gentle tides and serene coral reefs. Xylos was a planet defined by immense pressure, crushing depths, and the constant churning of its global ocean. Home to the Glar'glon, an aquatic species as formidable and unyielding as their environment. Imagine beings sculpted by the deep, sleek bioluminescent bodies, powerful tails propelling them through the water with terrifying speed, and eyes that pierce the gloom with unnerving clarity. The Glar'glon weren't merely adapted to their world. They were Xylos in every sense of the word. Their society mirrored the crushing pressure of their home, a rigid hierarchy built on unwavering discipline and absolute obedience. Each Glar'glon's life was meticulously planned, from the moment they hatched from their tightly packed communal nurseries to their eventual absorption back into the nutrient-rich depths upon their demise. No room for individuality, no tolerance for deviation. Duty was paramount, service absolute. The Glar'glon were warriors, guardians of Xylos, and their entire existence revolved around maintaining the planet's security and expanding their underwater empire. Central to their military might was the Tidal surge, a weapon of unparalleled power, capable of unleashing focused blasts of hydrokinetic energy that could shatter mountains and vaporize entire fleets. Housed within a colossal, pressure-resistant citadel carved deep into the ocean floor, the Tidal surge was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of Glar'glon dominance, a testament to their technological prowess, and the ultimate expression of their unwavering commitment to order. The Tidal surge drew its power from a unique source, a rare bioluminescent algae found only in the deepest trenches of Xylos. This algae, when properly stimulated, released a surge of raw energy, harnessed and amplified by the Glar'glon's intricate machinery. The process was sacred, guarded with zealous vigilance, for the Tidal surge was not just their greatest weapon, it was the keystone of their civilization, the very foundation upon which their rigidly structured society rested. Then, disrupting the eerie calm of Xylos, came Jenkins. Not a sleek, bioluminescent warrior, but a decidedly unimpressive specimen of Homo sapiens. He arrived in a small, somewhat battered transport ship as part of a, let's call it a cultural, exchange program. The Glar'glon weren't entirely sure what to make of it. Jenkins, fresh off his cramped vessel, blinked in the dim, watery light of the arrival bay, scratching his head. His standard-issue jumpsuit was rumpled, his hair a mess, and his grin was far too wide for the solemn occasion. This was not how one greeted the masters of the Tidal surge. Hey there," Jenkins drawled, his voice echoing oddly in the cavernous space. "Jenkins is the name, engineering's my game. You folks got any decent coffee around here? This trip was a killer." His casual demeanor was a stark contrast to the stoic, disciplined Glar'glon guards flanking him. He was, to put it mildly, an anomaly. Where the Glar'glon were precise and regimented, Jenkins was, well, Jenkins. Sarcastic, informal, and possessed of a laid-back attitude that bordered on the aggressively horizontal. He was about to turn the Glar'glon world upside down, one ill-timed joke at a time. The initial meetings were predictably a disaster. Jenkins, blissfully unaware of the intricate web of Glar'glon social cues, stumbled through protocols like a drunken bantha in a china shop. A simple good morning became a minefield of misinterpreted gestures and unintended insults. For example, his attempt to offer Commander Krill a friendly pat on the back, or rather the dorsal fin, was met with stunned silence and the distinct scent of rising aggression pheromones. Apparently, physical contact outside of sanctioned combat scenarios was a major no-no. "Oops," Jenkins mumbled, retracting his hand sheepishly. "My bad. Didn't realize you guys were so touchy." He further compounded his offenses by referring to the Tidal surge as a big ol' water gun and asking if their battle strategies involved pew-pew lasers. The Glar'glon, who took their weaponry and galactic dominance very seriously, were not amused. Commander Krill's brow ridges furrowed, deeper with each passing day. Jenkins' living quarters didn't fare much better. Accustomed to the sterile efficiency of Glar'glon architecture, he immediately set about personalizing his space with questionable artwork, mostly doodles of earth creatures, and a collection of half-eaten nutrient paste packets. The Glar'glon, cleaning drones designed to maintain absolute order, short-circuited in confusion. The Glar'glon found his constant humming of earth tunes particularly grating. The discordant melodies clashed horribly with the rhythmic pulse of their underwater cities, and his habit of addressing them by nicknames, Krill became Mr. Krabby, and the stoic Lieutenant Shimmer became Sparkles, was considered an act of supreme disrespect. Tension was definitely rising, as thick and murky as the Xylosian seabed. The grand tour of the Glar'glon military complex culminated, of course, at the heart of their strategic might. The Tidal surge. The weapon resided within a colossal water-filled chamber, dominating the space with its sheer size and ominous presence. Pipes snaked around it like colossal veins, feeding it the lifeblood of its destructive power. Commander Krill, puffing out his gills with pride, gestured towards the monstrous device. "Behold, Jenkins," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Tidal surge, the ultimate expression of Glar'glon military engineering. Jenkins circled the machine slowly, his eyes wide with what Krill hoped was awe. "Wow," he said finally, tilting his head. "That's certainly something." He reached out a hand, running his fingers along the cold, metallic casing. "So, what exactly does this thing do?" Krill launched into a detailed explanation of the tidal surge's capabilities. Its capacity to generate focused hydrokinetic energy, its range, its destructive potential, and the precise calculations that went into aiming and firing it. The weapon, he explained, could unleash a concentrated wave of energy capable of pulverizing enemy ships and leveling entire underwater cities, or so he thought. Jenkins listened with feigned attention, occasionally interjecting with seemingly innocent questions. "And the power source?" he asked, his eyes glinting mischievously. Krill led him to a smaller adjacent chamber filled with shimmering, bioluminescent algae cultivated in carefully controlled tanks. "Xylosian algae," Krill declared reverently. "Its unique bioenergetic properties are what fuel the tidal surge. It is naturally classified." Jenkins stared at the algae, a strange look of recognition spreading across his face. "Huh," he muttered, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Algae, eh? Interesting." He leaned closer to the tank, peering at the glowing green substance. "So, you just like burn this stuff to make the boom-boom happen?" Krill bristled at the simplification, an unsettling feeling creeping into his usually stoic demeanor. Something about the human's fascination with their most prized possession felt off. Days later, the disquiet within the Glar'glon High Command intensified. Jenkins, instead of diligently observing and learning as a cultural ambassador should, had begun spending an inordinate amount of time near the tidal surge. More specifically, he was always around the Xylosian algae tanks. He could be found at all hours, clad in the strange loose-fitting garments he called jeans and t-shirts, sketching diagrams on datapads, muttering to himself, and occasionally even reaching into the tanks to scoop out small samples of the algae. Of course, he always put it back, but the very act was a violation of protocol, not to mention deeply unsettling to the Glar'glon observers assigned to monitor him. One such observer, a particularly rigid Lieutenant Nash, reported Jenkins's activities to Commander Krill. "He is altering the machinery, Commander," Nash reported, his voice laced with concern. "I observed him attaching strange devices to the algae filtration system. Devices that, I must add, are not Glar'glon in origin." Krill, already on edge, felt a surge of alarm course through his gills. "Altering the machinery?" he repeated, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of devices?" Nash hesitated. "They appeared to be repurposed nutrient injectors, Commander, and some sort of modified blender?" Krill's eyes widened in disbelief. "A blender? What possible purpose could a human have for a blender near their most powerful weapon?" The suspicion that had been simmering beneath the surface now began to boil over. This was no mere cultural misunderstanding. This was sabotage. The metallic echo of Commander Krill's approach reverberated through the tidal surge chamber. Jenkins, perched precariously on a maintenance platform, didn't seem to notice. He was too busy fiddling with a tangle of wires and humming a tuneless melody. "Jenkins!" Krill's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Explain yourself." Jenkins startled, nearly dropping a coil of shimmering cable. "Whoa, hey Commander, didn't see you there. Just, giving this thing a little tune-up." He grinned, a gesture that Krill found deeply unsettling. "A tune-up?" Krill's voice dripped with skepticism. "With what, repurposed nutrient injectors and a modified blender?" Jenkins chuckled. "Hey, a guy's gotta use what he's got, right? Besides, the manufacturer's warranty on this thing expired like centuries ago. Needed a little love." Krill swam closer, his eyes fixed on the intricate modifications Jenkins had made to the tidal surge's energy regulators. "Love? You call this love? This looks like you're trying to disable our primary weapon." Jenkins threw his hands up in mock surrender. "Disable it? Commander, you wound me. I'm an engineer, not a saboteur. Though I gotta say, the original design here? Kinda clunky." "Clunky?" Krill sputtered. "This weapon has defended Xylos for generations. It is a masterpiece of Glar'glon engineering." Jenkins shrugged. "Hey, no offense, but it could use some streamlining. Plus, I think I can boost its efficiency, make it more bubbly." Krill's patience evaporated like a puddle on Xylos' scorching seabed. "Bubbly? This is a weapon of unimaginable power, not some child's toy." Jenkins's laid-back demeanor only intensified Krill's fury. "Relax, Commander, trust me. It'll be a blast." The human winked, a gesture Krill now interpreted as a thinly veiled threat. The day arrived for the tidal surge demonstration. High-ranking Glar'glon officials, adorned in ceremonial armor, filled the observation chamber. Commander Krill stood stiffly beside Jenkins, his mandibles twitching with a mixture of anxiety and simmering rage. He watched as Jenkins gave a final nonchalant tap to the control panel. "Ready to witness the future of, well, something, Commander?" Jenkins quipped, flashing a thumbs up. Krill gritted his teeth and gave the order. "Engage tidal surge." With a surge of power, the massive weapon hummed to life. The chamber filled with a low, resonant drone that usually preceded a cataclysmic energy blast. But today, something was different. The hum wavered, sputtered, and then popped. Instead of a focused beam of destructive energy, a cascade of shimmering, iridescent bubbles erupted from the weapon's nozzle. The bubbles floated lazily through the chamber, reflecting the horrified faces of the Glar'glon dignitaries. A collective gasp filled the room. Commander Krill stared in disbelief, his usually stern face a mask of utter confusion. What is the meaning of this?" he stammered, turning to Jenkins. The human engineer simply grinned, looking as pleased as Punch. "Surprise," Jenkins announced, spreading his arms wide. "I call it the bubblicious tidal wave." He plucked a bubble from the air and popped it between his fingers, releasing a faint, sweet scent. The Glar'glon watched, their militaristic composure crumbling with each passing effervescent sphere. Jenkins chuckled, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. Okay, so maybe it's not so great at obliterating planetary threats anymore," he admitted, scratching the back of his head. "But trust me, it's way better at something else." He gestured towards the modified control panel. "See that Xylosian algae you guys are so protective of? Turns out it's the key ingredient in this little human beverage we call space soda." He paused for dramatic effect. "And this," he said, patting the tidal surge, "is now the galaxy's largest space soda dispenser." A ripple of disbelief passed through the Glar'glon ranks. Commander Krill's eyes widened so dramatically it looked like they might pop right out of his head. "Space soda?" he repeated, the words dripping with incredulity. "You mean to tell us this weapon and our most devastating creation, Yao, is a machine like for making A drink? Jenkins shrugged, unfazed by the mounting horror around him. Well, yeah, basically. I just streamlined the process a bit, you know? Made it more efficient. The original recipe was kind of a pain to brew, lots of stirring and bubbling. This, he gestured again to the now bubble-spewing weapon, cuts out all the fuss. He plucked another bubble from the air and offered it to Krill. Care to try? It's best served cold, but I'm working on a refrigeration module for the next update. Think of it as a cultural exchange. We give you refreshing beverages, you give us, well, a really big algae juicing machine. The absurdity of the situation began to dawn on the Glar'glon. Their mighty tidal surge, the symbol of their power and military prowess, was nothing more than a glorified soda fountain. The weapon that was meant to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies now produced nothing more threatening than bubbles. Bubbles that smelled faintly of lime and artificial sweetener. Horror dawned on the faces of the Glar'glon, a slow, creeping realization that spread like a toxic bloom. Their tidal surge, the embodiment of their martial might, reduced to a soda fountain. The implications crashed over them like a rogue wave. Centuries of rigid tradition, of unwavering militaristic doctrine, all built upon the foundation of fizzy refreshment? Commander Krill stared at the bubble in his claw, his usually stern face a mask of bewildered dismay. He flicked the bubble away as if it burned him, then turned to address his troops, but the words caught in his throat. How could he possibly explain this? How could he reconcile the devastating truth with the ironclad principles they had lived by? A low murmur began to ripple through the ranks, escalating into a chorus of confused, guttural croaks. The Glar'glon warriors, usually so disciplined and stoic, began to fidget and whisper amongst themselves. Their carefully constructed worldview, their entire sense of identity was collapsing before their very eyes. The tidal surge, still merrily spewing bubbles, seemed to mock their despair. The sweet artificial scent of space soda filled the air, a constant reminder of their monumental blunder. They had revered this weapon, protected it, even named their battle formations after its destructive potential. Now, it was just embarrassing. The revelation cut deeper than any energy blast could have. It wasn't just the weapon itself that was compromised, but the very core of their society. Their rigid customs, their unwavering belief in militaristic dominance, all seemed ludicrous now, built on a foundation of carbonated algae. The Glar'glon had defined themselves by a lie, and a human, of all beings, had exposed it with a few simple tweaks and a thirst for space soda. The Glar'glon society, once a paragon of order and discipline, dissolved into a sea of uncertainty. The revelation that their most prized weapon was, in essence, a giant soda machine, triggered a societal earthquake. Their entire value system, predicated on the tidal surge's power, now seemed laughably absurd. Commander Krill, once the stoic embodiment of Glar'glon military might, found himself adrift in a sea of existential dread. He watched as his soldiers, the pride of Xylos, grappled with the cognitive dissonance of their reality. The foundations of their world had cracked, and the sweet scent of space soda filled the void, a constant fizzy reminder of their folly. Amidst the chaos, Jenkins stood calmly, a can of space soda in hand. He surveyed the scene with a detached amusement, as if observing an ant farm that had just been flooded. The Glar'glon stared at him, a mixture of resentment, confusion, and, was that curiosity? Care for a taste? Jenkins offered, popping the top of the can. The sound echoed in the stunned silence of the weapon chamber. Bubbles fizzed invitingly. It's much better than shooting bubbles, trust me. Krill hesitated, his mandibles twitching. The principles he had lived by screamed in protest, but the sheer absurdity of the situation was compelling. He looked at his troops, their faces a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. What did they have to lose? With a sigh that sounded suspiciously like a gurgle, Krill extended a claw. Jenkins, unfazed, poured a generous stream of space soda into it. Krill cautiously brought the claw to his mouth and tasted the sweet, fizzy liquid. His eyes widened. A strange sensation coursed through him, a mixture of sugar rush and existential relief. It was actually quite refreshing. He took another sip and then another. The rigid lines of his face softened slightly. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than tidal surges and military drills. One by one, the Glar'glon warriors succumbed to curiosity, accepting Jenkins' offering of space soda. The taste was alien yet strangely appealing. As they drank, the tension in the room eased, replaced by a hesitant, bubbly camaraderie. The revolution had begun, one sip at a time. A few rotations later, Xylos was almost unrecognizable. The sterile, regimented streets now buzzed with a peculiar energy, the sound of fizzing space soda and the murmur of relaxed conversation. The Glar'glon, once paragons of militaristic efficiency, now lounged in algae-padded chairs, sipping their favorite beverage. The transformation was, in no small part, thanks to Jenkins. He'd stayed on, acting as a sort of, well, he wasn't quite sure what to call himself. Cultural ambassador? Soda sommelier? Whatever it was, he seemed content, tinkering with new flavor, combinations and expanding the space soda production line. The tidal surge, once the symbol of Glar'glon might, now churned out space soda at an astonishing rate. The algae, once harvested for its destructive potential, was now cultivated for its deliciousness. The military drills were replaced with bubble-blowing contests, and the war chants were replaced with catchy space soda jingles. Even Commander Krill had undergone a transformation. He could often be found sporting a Hawaiian shirt made of woven seaweed, a can of space soda in his claw, offering surprisingly insightful commentary on the nuances of bubble formation. The rigidity of his past life seemed a distant memory, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the simple pleasures. The story of Xylos became a cautionary tale and a humorous one, a reminder that even the most formidable cultures can be undone by something as trivial as a fizzy drink, and that sometimes the greatest weapon is not one of destruction, but one of refreshment. The contrast was stark, the irony delicious. The universe, it seemed, had a rather peculiar sense of humor, and Jenkins, the unassuming human engineer, was its unwitting punchline. As he raised a can of space soda to the Xylosian sky, he couldn't help but grin. To letting others down, he muttered, and accidentally lifting them up.